Alright, so now we're on to the next video. We're going to be talking about pin escapes. Pin escapes are super important. They're not the most glamorous thing to work, but they are something that you're going to have to work. So you might be watching this video as a beginner, somebody who's just looking to start jiu-jitsu, and the reason you wanted to start was because you wanted to learn self-defense. You wanted to learn how to fight, right? So self-defense, anybody that's honest about this would tell you the best self-defense is to run away, right? The only time that you would need to fight is because somebody is holding you down. And that is what we're talking about, pin escapes. We're using the skill of getting out of someone's control. If you can't run away from a fight, it's because someone is controlling you. So pin escapes, in essence, are the most important thing to learn in fighting because you need to not be controlled in fighting, right? So there's many different pins, and we're going to go over those in a moment, but I want you to think about the fact that when you start jiu-jitsu, you are the lowest guy on the totem pole, right? Everybody is going to have more skill than you. It's just natural, it's fine. But what that does tell you is that when we do live sparring and we're just open rolling, it's going to be difficult for you to start employing offense and trying to hit submissions and things like that right away because they're not necessarily just going to give that to you. But what you always can do is give people pins and then work out of them. So you can always use your time wisely by giving people pins. There's not a person in the jiu-jitsu gym that's not going to take mount on you or take side control if you give it to them. So we'll talk about a few of these pins. So one of the first pins that we can talk about is side control. Side control is where my partner is across my body and usually has a cross-face arm and an underhook arm. And this is a very, very common position. This is where you're going to be a ton as a new beginner. So just talking about some concepts. When we're doing pin escapes, my number one goal is always to bring everything to the inside position. And so what does that mean? The inside position means that my limbs are inside of Adam's limbs. Right now, I'm in about as bad as a side control as I could possibly be in, right? He has the inside position on my arm. He's inside of my arm. He has the inside position on this arm. His knee is blocking me from bringing my arm into his body. And then he's also got my legs outside of the picture. So everything that we're looking to do is get back to inside position. I'm just going to make it as simple as possible. That's all we need to think about as beginners, is trying to bring everything in. We want to become a little ball that you can't actually flatten out, because the way that you get attacked in jiu-jitsu is that you have your limbs isolated, right? Right now this limb is isolated. If Adam pulled this arm up, he could start pulling me into arm bars. He could pull me into kimuras, whatever he wants, right? So our number one goal is always to make sure that everything comes back to inside position as a beginner. So inside position could look like, let's say we're in this as the worst side control variation we could be in. He has everything, right? He has this inside position, he has this inside position, and my knees aren't in the picture. So if I want to get this arm back, a really easy way to do that is to plant it outside of his knee. And now I'm going to bridge. If he does nothing, I just bridge over my shoulder and he rolls and I actually come up on top. So anybody with skill, and you're going to be rolling with people with skill in your gym, won't do that. They're going to adjust their base. So when I block his knee and I bridge, he adjusts his base and he made too much space, and now I bring my arm to the inside. He'll come back and try to make it tighter, but now I have a frame to keep Adam away from me, right? I have a frame to actually make more space now. My second order of business would be to get this back. So I'm going to try to bring this inside and make sure that it's safe. My thumb is inside of his armpit. I'm making sure that it's very hard for him to just take my elbow now and go around the body for arm bars and things like that, like you just saw. This is a much harder grip to grab than if I just let him hold on to my tricep right here, right? Or pin my arms that way, right? Yeah, so we keep everything inside the vehicle, safe at all times. And then lastly, our goal is always to get back to a guard. And we're going to go into guard retention in the next video. And you can also see these things in the free mini course that I also dropped in the description of the, of my bio. But if you want to find more information on this, but just to show you the basics, a guard is where we're going to bring our knees to our chest and make sure that our legs are between us and our opponent. And that's the closest thing you're going to get to a force field in real life. So what we're going to do is just try to shift our hips out and connect our knee and our elbow. My elbow, if Adam lifts up, my elbow and my knee are connected now. This is a very strong frame. We're always creating frames inside of our body. So once we have our frames between Adam and I can post on my own foot and push him away and start to bring everything to the middle. Now there's no pin. I can start to sit up, I have mobility again, and we can start playing. We can look for our own offense here. So again, if we're in a side control, the name of the game is always just to bring everything to the inside. There are many ways to do this, but some of the most simple ones and most effective are, especially from starting out in a very bad position where he has all the inside real estate, is to post on the outside of his knee. I bridge, he makes space, I bring it into the middle. Now he tries to come back and suck the space back up again, but now I have a frame, and I bring my other arm inside to make sure this one's safe as well. And now I'm just turning my hips away from him, turning my foot inverted, and inserting my knee. Now this is a really strong frame. Even if Adam tries to hold on really tight, I can turn away from him, and I broke open his lock. And now I can put my feet back between Adam and I have a guard again. So now we're not going to be pinned. So that should get you started pretty well with side control. Now we're going to talk about another one that's very common, and this is mount. So mount is something that you've definitely seen if you've ever watched UFC. This is where you're going to get your face beaten in, right? So again, the name of the game is always hands inside the vehicle at all times. Turn into a little ball, own all the inside real estate, right? So what we're going to do here, a really good one to start out with, is a knee elbow escape. All we're going to do is bring our elbows to the inside of his knee. This means that I'm starting to be in the driver's seat of this position. I'm going to be able to get his feet outside of the line of my hips and then catch his feet and put him back in a guard. So I just make sure that I get my elbows inside of his knees. That's my number one priority. And then I'm just going to grab my hands like this, and I'm going to push against his hips. So even if Adam's trying to push into me, it's much harder for him to come up my body. The higher up he is on my body, the more inside real estate he owns, right? Now he's inside my arms, and it's very difficult for me to do anything here. I can't even move him because all my power comes from my hips, and he's not sitting on them anymore. So when we're in this position, our number one frame should be to get inside the knee with our elbows and then frame on the hips. So now if Adam tries to climb higher on my body, it's much harder. I keep him down at my hip level so I can move him and I can start catching his legs. So now we're going to talk about catching the leg. All we're going to do is turn slightly in this direction, make my leg flat on the ground, push his knee outwards, and then I'm just going to catch with my outside leg over his ankle and put it in between my legs like this. And then once I've gotten to this position, I'm going to keep pushing this so that I can get his knee through the lock of my legs. So I keep pushing it, keep pushing it. Now it's in the lock of my legs. And even if I stopped here, I've created a guard. We are now not in the same position. I'm not pinned anymore. But from here, we just want to turn and bring our knee here. So now when he tries to come in, I have a knee shield. I'm keeping him away. We're managing distance, and we can go into our offense from here. So again, name of the game, inside real estate. We want to own it all, monopoly. So he's going to be trying to come up and take all the inside real estate from me. I'm trying to keep him down. I want to make sure that my elbows stay inside of his knees. My arms stay over his hips to keep him from climbing. And then I'm going to be looking to turn to one side or the other. Typically, if you clasp your hands on this side, you're going to want to turn to that side. So I just turn. I don't want to go so far that my elbow goes across the center line, and now you can take my back, right? We just want to make sure that we keep it completely across both hips. So my hand's on one hip, my elbow's on the other. I put this one inside of his knee, and I just start moving it out till I can catch this ankle. I pull it up, and I pinch it between my legs. Now I'm going to start pushing the knee back through the lock of my legs and turn into Adam. I can take an underhook. I could just put my knee shield in right here and start framing again. Adam tries to push onto me. This is a guard, right? We're going to get into guards in the next video, but this is an example of a guard. And now once you've gotten into a guard, you're not pinned anymore. You're not effectively controlled. So another common one would be the back, right? So the back, most people don't think of it as a pin, but I'm going to put it in here because you need to have basic back defense. This is the king of positions in our sport. The human body is not designed to be dealing with threats from the back, right? This is the most highest percentage submission in the entire sport. It's the most winning position in the entire sport. It's where everybody wants to get, right? So when we get into this position, typically they're going to fall to one hip or the other. So we're going to fall to one hip or the other. Typically they're going to fall onto the overhook side. This one's going over my body. This one's going under my arm. So this is called the seatbelt. What we want to make sure we do is whatever arm is over my shoulder, that's going to be the one that obviously strangles me, right? If he tries to strangle me with this hand, it goes over my arm and I can just pull this down. It'll never go across my neck. So this one is the one that's going to be the problem. So what I want to do is make sure I take my opposite hand and I take this grip just like a claw and I just put it right into his wrist. It's called a C grip. I put it into his wrist and I hold here and then I double off and I turn and look at him. That's all I want to do. This is going to make it very, very difficult for Adam to strangle me now. Okay? This is how we just stay safe in the position. Anytime this hand gets taken off, we replace it and put it back on. So if Adam takes it off, I'm going to try to grab, he tries to take this off. I grab it with my other hand, get my hand free, and put it back on. That's all I want you guys to focus on for getting out of the back. And now I want you to turn and look at your partner. And what we're going to try to do is just lift it over our head and pin it to our body. Once I've pinned it to my body, all I'm going to try to do now is start turning out. I'm getting my hips to the mat. And my whole goal is to get my elbow to the mat. If my elbow touches the mat, I'm out. I'm very safe. There's nothing he's going to do to be able to take my back again once my elbow hits the mat. It means I've actually turned around, so he has no exposure of the back anymore, right? In order to take my back, he has to be behind my elbows. So if my elbow hits the mat, he's no longer behind it. So one more time, when we get into the back position, we're going to grab a C grip over his primary hand. His primary hand is the one that's going to strangle me, which is always going to be the one that's over my arms, not this one. Doesn't make any sense for him to go here. I can just pull my arm down and it'll never get across my neck, right? So when we get here, we want to just take our primary defensive hand, which is always the opposite one, and we're just going to put it right here down by the wrist, and then we're going to double it off and glue it to our body. If Adam tries to do it now, it's very difficult for him. It's very hard for him to actually start taking this off. Again, if you want to see more of this, this is in the mini instructional that I've released on the bio. You can get that for free. Check it out. It goes much more in depth. But just for now, what we're looking to do is turn and look at our partner. And then all I'm trying to do is lift it over my head, take it off, and now I'm here. Now I'm very safe. I'm almost out. The last thing I need to do is keep moving my hips to the mat and get my elbow to the floor. Once my elbow hits the floor, we're scrambling for top position and we just try to get our guard back. Okay? You can go into leg locks and more advanced things. Again, that's covered in the instructional, but for now, as a beginner, you're mostly just gonna get your guard back, and that's fine. If we get these three main positions down, pat, as a beginner, you're gonna be so much further ahead of new beginners, other beginners in your experience level, that you're gonna be able to start going into your offense much earlier, and you're gonna have a much better time at jiu-jitsu. You're gonna actually gain skills that will make sure that you won't have hesitation when you go for your offense, because you know that if you get put in any of these bad positions, you know how to get out safely and stay safe and not get submitted, right? So your whole entire jiu-jitsu career, defense is going to be number one, in my opinion. It's going to allow you to open up everything else because you'll be confident in yourself to not get submitted.